Welcome to Book Club. Today we're diving into the roaring 20s with F. Scott Fitzgerald's masterpiece, The Great Gatsby. This book is famous for a reason. It's got rich people behaving badly, secret affairs, and a lot of beautiful sentences. So let's just start. The story is told by Nick Carraway. Nick introduces himself as a man who tries not to judge people. He tells us that his father gave him this piece of advice, quote, "Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you have had." From the beginning, Nick wants us to trust him. He says he is inclined to reserve all judgments. He moved east to New York in the spring of 1922 to learn the bond business. Now, the setting is crucial here. Nick lives on Long Island in a place called West Egg. He describes it as the less fashionable of the two enormous egg-shaped formations of land. Now, picture two giant eggs separated by water. West Egg is where the new money lives, people who have just gotten into their money, while East Egg, on the other hand, is where the old aristocratic money lives. Nick lives in a small, ugly house in West Egg, but right next to him is a massive mansion with a tower and a marble swimming pool. Now, this mansion belongs to the mysterious J. Gatsby, but we haven't met him yet. First, Nick drives across the water to the fashionable East Egg to have dinner with his cousin Daisy Buchanan and her husband Tom. Let's talk about Tom. If you need a villain, he's a good start. He was a football player in college and he is incredibly rich. Nick describes him as having a cruel body. He is arrogant, aggressive, and obsessed with the idea that civilization is going to pieces because the white race is being submerged. An overall charming guy, clearly. Then there's Daisy. She's charming in a different way. She has a low, thrilling voice that fascinates men. She acts happy, but she tells Nick that she is cynical about everything. At this dinner, we also meet Jordan Baker. She's a professional golfer. She's cool, slender, and looks at everyone with a bored, haughty face. Now, the dinner is intense. Why? Because during the dinner, the phone rings. Jordan tells Nick to be quiet because she wants to listen. She also reveals that Tom has some woman in New York. So, overall, Tom is cheating on Daisy, but Daisy acts as though she does not know this, pretending to act oblivious. When Nick gets home to West Egg, he sees his neighbor, Gatsby, standing on the lawn in the dark. Now, Gatsby is acting strangely. He is stretching his arms towards the water, trembling. Nick looks out to see what he is reaching for, but all he sees is a single green light, minute and far away, at the end of the dock. Now, chapter 2 takes us away from the golden glitter. We move to the road between West Egg and New York. This area is called the Valley of Ashes. It's a fantastic description. It is a grey farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills. It's dusty, dirty, and depressing. Watching over this grey land is a giant billboard with the blue eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. They are just painted eyes looking through yellow spectacles, but they brood on over the solemn dumping ground. Tom forces Nick to get off the train here to meet his girl. They go to a garage owned by George Wilson, a blonde, spiritless, anemic man. But George's wife is the main attraction. This is Myrtle Wilson. She isn't traditionally beautiful, but she has incredible vitality, as her fingers are continually smoldering. She is Tom Buchanan's mistress. Now, after this awkward meetup in the garage, Tom takes Myrtle and Nick into New York City. Myrtle is living the high life on Tom's money. She even buys a puppy from a man on the street. They go to an apartment Tom keeps for their affair. They invite Myrtle's sister Catherine and some neighbors, the Marquis, and they get drunk. Nick actually mentions that he has been drunk just twice in his life, and this was the second time. Now, the party gets messy. Myrtle changes her dress and her personality changes too. She becomes arrogant and loud. She starts shouting Daisy's name to annoy Tom. Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. Now, and this is a shocking moment that ends the chapter. Tom, with a short, deft movement, breaks Myrtle's nose with his open hand. The party ends with bloody towels, women scolding, and Nick stumbling out to wait for the 4 a.m. train. Okay, that was a lot of action. Let's do A quick recap of the characters we've met so far. Nick Carraway. He's our narrator, he lives in West Egg and claims to be an honest man that is not judgmental. Great Gatsby. He's the mysterious rich neighbor who lives in West Egg, who we see reaching for the green light but we haven't officially met. We've also met Tom Buchanan. He's a brute living in West Egg and has old money and is also cheating on his wife, Daisy. There's Daisy Buchanan. He's Tom's wife and Nick's cousin. She's beautiful but sad. We've also met Jordan Baker. She's the nonchalant athlete and Daisy's friend. We've also met Myrtle Wilson. She's a mistress of Tom and lives in the Valley of Ashes. Now, let's move on to chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is all about excess. Gatsby's house is like an amusement park. Every weekend, people just show up. They are not invited to these parties, they just go there and act crazy. Fitzgerald gives us one of the most beautiful descriptions in the book right here. I needed to hear the sentence because it sort of sets the whole mood. Quote, "In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars." Now this description of like moths is perfect because they're just drawn to the light. Nick, our narrator, is actually unique because he was one of the few people who was actually invited. While Nick wanders around, he hears wild rumors. People say Gatsby killed a man. Someone else says he was a German spy. Nobody really knows the truth about who Great Gatsby is. Now Nick decides to separate himself from the drinking crowd and gets into the house. He stumbles into Gatsby's gallery and meets a drunk man with all-eyed, shaved spectacles. Now this man is shocked, absolutely shocked by the fact that the books on the shelves are real. He initially thought they would be fake cardboard props, but it just shows us that everyone expects Gatsby to be fake. Finally, Nick sits down at a table with a man who says his face looks familiar from the wall. They chat and suddenly the man reveals himself. In a nonchalant way, he just says, "I'm Gatsby," he says. And here is the moment that the reader truly falls in love with this mysterious figure. Nick describes Gatsby's smile as not just a smile, but as a tool. Quote, "It was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it. It understood you just so far as you wanted to be understood. Believed in you as you would like to believe in yourself. But this illusion breaks quickly. As soon as his smile vanishes, Nick says he's just a young, roughneck guy trying too hard to sound fancy." Chapter 3 ends with Nick spending some time with Jordan Baker. He realizes she's a bit of a liar and that she also cheats at golf. But Nick forgives her because he decides he has a special virtue. He says, quote, "I am one of those few people that I have ever known who are truly honest," which honestly is something that a liar would say. But let's move on. Chapter 4 begins with a list of the people who came to Gatsby's party. It reads like a who's who of the 1920s, full of wealthy people. Gatsby picks Nick up in his gorgeous, ridiculous yellow car to go to lunch in New York. On the ride, Gatsby tries to tell Nick his life story, but it sounds scripted. He says he is from the Midwest, but when Nick asks which city, Gatsby says San Francisco. Now, for those who do not know about the United States geography, San Francisco is not in the Midwest. Gatsby also claims he went to Oxford and carries a medal from Montenegro in his pocket to prove his war stories. It's all a bit too suspicious. At lunch, Nick meets Gatsby's friend, Mayor Wolfsheim. He's a shady character who wears cufflinks made out of human molars. A few minutes into meeting him, Gatsby drops this bombshell about Wolfsheim, quote, "He's the man who fixed the World Series back in 1919. This tells us that Gatsby is connected to organized crime. He is not just a party host, he is also involved in something possibly illegal. But the biggest reveal in this chapter comes way later. Jordan Baker tells Nick a story from 1917. It turns out that Daisy and Gatsby knew each other 5 years ago and that they were madly in love. But Gatsby went to war and Daisy married Tom Buchanan because he was rich. Jordan tells Nick that on the night before her wedding, Daisy got drunk and cried, holding a letter from Gatsby saying she changed her mind, but she married Tom anyway. And now we know why Gatsby bought that specific mansion. Jordan delivers the line that connects all the dots. Quote, Gatsby bought that house so that Daisy will be just across the bay. The green light he was reaching for wasn't just a light, he was reaching out for Daisy. And this is also where Gatsby asks Nick a favor. Gatsby wants Nick to invite Daisy over for tea at his place, and then Gatsby will just randomly pass by and show Daisy that he has a massive house and finally prove that he is rich enough for her. At this point, I'd just like to say that we are raising the stakes. We are moving away from social satire of the previous chapters into the philosophical heart of the novel. We're going to talk about time, how we waste it, how we try to control it, and the tragedy of getting exactly what you wished for. Chapter 5 is famous for one thing, the reunion. Gatsby wants Nick to invite Daisy for tea so he can accidentally drop by. But the weather sets the scene perfectly. It is pouring rain. The atmosphere is soggy and tense. Gatsby, the man who usually looks so cool and collected, is a wreck. He sends a man to cut Nick's grass in the rain, and he arrives looking pale with dark circles under his eyes. He is acting like a teenager in love. At one point, he panics and tries to leave before Daisy even arrives, but when she does arrive, the tension in the room is unbearable. At one point, Gatsby is leaning against Nick's mantelpiece, trying to look casual, but he knocks over a defunct mantelpiece clock. He catches it with trembling fingers. No, a defunct clock simply means a broken clock. He is literally trying to hold on to a moment that has stopped. He is trying to rewind time to 5 years ago. After the awkwardness passes, the sun comes out and they move to the party to Gatsby's massive mansion. And this is where the romance turns into something materialistic. Gatsby takes Daisy on a tour. He isn't just showing her a house, he is showing her his worth. He shows her his music rooms, his sunken baths, his dressing rooms, but the climax of the tour happens in his closet. Now this scene is quite literally legendary. Gatsby starts throwing his shirts on the table. Silk, flannel, linen, coral, apple green, lavender. It's a soft, rich heap of fabric. And then Daisy breaks down. Now listen to this quote because it's both beautiful and incredibly shallow. Quote, "They're such beautiful shirts," she sobbed. "It makes me sad because I've never seen such beautiful shirts before." Is she crying about the laundry, or is she crying because she realizes that she could have had the love and the money if she had just waited? But there is also a tragedy for Gatsby. For years, the green light on his dock was a magical symbol, but now that she's standing right there, the magic sort of vanishes. Nick notes, quote, "His count of enchanted objects had diminished by one. Reality can never truly live up to the dream." In chapter 6, the tone shifts. A reporter shows up, curious about the myth that Gatsby is. Now Nick decides to break the fourth wall and tell us, the readers, the truth about Gatsby's past. And at this point, I would like for all of us to bid goodbye to J. Gatsby of Oxford and say hello to James Katz of North Dakota. James Katz was a poor farm boy who reinvented himself. He changed his name at the age of 17 when he met a millionaire named Dan Cody on a yacht. This is where Fitzgerald gets philosophical. He describes Gatsby's transformation with this incredible line. Quote, "The truth was that J. Gatsby of Wistead, Long Island, sprang from his Platonic conception of himself. Platonic conception simply means that he created an ideal version of himself in his head and then became it. He willed himself into existence. He spent 5 years traveling the world with Dan Cody, learning how to act rich even though he didn't inherit the money. Back to the present, Gatsby hosts another party, but this one feels different because Tom is present. And this section was particularly painful to read. Tom is arrogant and rude. He calls Gatsby a bootlegger. Daisy tries to defend Gatsby, but she clearly hates the party. She is appalled by the raw vigor of West Egg. She thinks it's trashy. And this sort of destroys Gatsby. After they leave, Gatsby is devastated. He tells Nick she didn't like it. He tells Gatsby, quote, "I wouldn't ask too much of her. You can't repeat the past." And there it is, the line that defines the entire American dream. The line that breaks your heart because you know it's wrong. But Gatsby cries out, "Can't repeat the past," he cried. "Why, of course you can." He truly believes he can fix everything. He thinks he can erase the last 5 years, erase Tom, erase Daisy's child, and go back to that singular moment in Louisville when they first kissed. Chapter 7 begins with Gatsby shutting down his lavish parties. The parties were just a means to an end, to lure Daisy. Now that he has her, he doesn't need the moths anymore. The house is silent and hollow. It is the hottest day Nick can remember. The heat isn't just about weather. It's a physical representation of the characters' rising anger and suspicion. The group, Nick, Gatsby, Daisy, Tom, Jordan, all decide to go to New York City. They stop for gas on the way, and we get a quick, tragic glimpse of George Wilson at the Valley of Ashes. He is sick and seems half mad. He has discovered that his wife Myrtle is having an affair, and he is determined to move her west. But the irony is blatantly thick. Tom is standing right there, and Myrtle is locked upstairs, about to be taken away. They end up in a suite at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan. Tom, having suspected Gatsby and Daisy for weeks, finally forces the issue. He is arrogant, hypocritical, and utterly convinced of his own moral superiority. Gatsby forces the final play. He tells Tom that Daisy never loved him, that she has only ever loved Gatsby. Tom laughs at him. Gatsby looks at Daisy, waiting for her confirmation, and Daisy, faced with the tough decision of leaving her life of comfort and security for a man who is literally living a lie, breaks. She can't do it. She says, "Oh, you want too much." And then Tom drops the final fatal bomb. He exposes Gatsby's source of wealth. He and his whole shine bought up a lot of side street drugstores here and in Chicago and sold grain alcohol over the counter. That's one of his little stunts. Gatsby is a bootlegger. His wealth is based on illegal alcohol. Tom, the old money aristocrat, wins the moral high ground by exposing the new money criminal. The dream is officially over. Daisy retreats back to the safety of Tom's wealth, leaving Gatsby alone. The party is over, and Tom sends Gatsby and Daisy back to Long Island together in Gatsby's yellow car, a gesture meant to show his total confidence. Nick and Jordan drive back with Tom. On the drive, they pass the Valley of Ashes and the garage, and then tragedy strikes. George Wilson has let his cheating wife out, and she runs into the road, thinking the big yellow car is Tom coming back for her. Gatsby's car hits Myrtle, killing her instantly. It's a brutal, chaotic moment, and the craziest part about all of this was that Gatsby wasn't even the one driving, Daisy was driving. Gatsby immediately takes the blame. He waits outside the Buchanan house that night, protecting Daisy from a potential scandal, watching Tom and Daisy inside, reconciled. Nick leaves him with the final great testament of his misplaced loyalty. "They're a rotten crowd," I shouted across the lawn. "You're worth the whole damn bunch put together." Chapter 8 is the novel's tragic denouement. The next morning, Nick goes to Gatsby's house for the last time. The house, which was once a symbol of wildlife, is now silent and feels tainted by death. Gatsby tells Nick the full, true story of his past with Daisy. He admits he was poor and took Daisy under false pretenses. His love for her wasn't just passion, it was a desperate ambition to be someone worthy of her. Nick tells us that Gatsby was still holding on to that hope that Daisy would call, that she would leave Tom for him. Gatsby's whole life, everything he had built, was just waiting for that one phone call. Meanwhile, George Wilson is losing his mind. Tom, acting on his own fear and prejudice, tells Wilson that the yellow car belonged to Gatsby and that Gatsby was Myrtle's lover. Wilson believes that the all-seeing eyes of Dr. T.J. Alcoburn are the eyes of God, and that Gatsby is an evil man who killed his wife and needs to pay. Gatsby decides to use his pool for the last time, delaying the training for the season. It's an act of futile hope. Wilson tracks Gatsby down to the pool. He shoots Gatsby, killing him instantly in the water. Then Wilson shoots himself. The ultimate tragedy. Gatsby dies not while running an illegal racket, but while swimming in his own pool, waiting for a call that will never come. Having finally achieved peace in his garden for the first time, Nick sums up the profound failure. He had committed himself to the following of a grail. Now, a grail is a sacred mythical quest. Gatsby did not chase money, he chased an ideal, a dream he imagined in the past, and he was destroyed by the difference between that dream and the reality of Daisy. We're covering the final act finally. It's a quiet, devastating coda to all the noise and tragedy we've just witnessed. And the chapter is essentially an inventory of loss. The dream has been killed, and now we must witness the funeral. The narrative shifts completely from breathless action to a deep philosophical melancholy. We learn who truly mattered to Gatsby, and the answer is almost no one. Nick, our narrator, is left to handle the mess. The police, the newspapers, the endless questions. But the hardest part is getting someone, pretty much anyone, to care about the man who hosted 1,000 guests. The parties were packed, but the mourning circle is empty. Nick tries to call Daisy, but she and Tom are already gone. They have simply vanished without a trace, moving on as if nothing ever happened. This is where Fitzgerald delivers a brutal judgment on the wealthy class. It's the ultimate action of evasion. They leave Nick holding the bag. Exactly. Nick sums up the profound immorality of the Buchanan type with this observation. They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made. That's a thesis statement for the novel right there. They are protected by their privilege, and the consequences of their actions land squarely on Gatsby, George Wilson, and Nick. Nick tries to reach out to Wolsheim, Gatsby's business partner, to organize a funeral, but Wolsheim, with cold, cynical self-preservation, refuses to get involved. He literally says, "Let us learn to show our friendship for a man when he is alive and not after he is dead." Just when you think that Gatsby is completely alone in this world, two unexpected figures show up. The first is Gatsby's dad, Henry C. Katz, who arrives from the Midwest. He's a simple working-class man who knows nothing of the mansion or of the wild parties. It's a moment of deep contrast. The father only knew James Katz, the honest boy. Don't get me wrong, he is incredibly proud of his son's success, even if he doesn't truly comprehend the true source. Mr. Katz shows Nick an old photograph of the house and, most poignantly, an old copy of Hopalong Cassidy that Gatsby used as a boy. Inside, James Katz had written a schedule, a list of resolutions of self-improvement, like practice elocution and poise, study electricity, and be better to parents. It confirms the tragedy. The vast, corrupt Gatsby was built upon the fierce, innocent ambition of James Katz. It wasn't just a mask. It was a deeply intended, highly regimented self-creation. The funeral is a disaster. Despite Nick delaying it for days, hoping for Daisy, she sends nothing. No flowers, no message. And in the end, only 5 people show up to the cemetery. Nick, Mr. Katz, a few servants, and one surprising guest. It's Outlies, the drunk man from the library in chapter 3, the man who was so fascinated that Gatsby's books were actually real. He provides the only fitting eulogy for the man who lived the American dream, but twisted it into a nightmare. As they walk from the grave, All Eyes looks back and says with a sober finality, "The poor son of a bitch," he said softly. The man who saw through the facade still showed up. It's a crude, maybe honest benediction that resonates more than anything the wealthy could offer. Gatsby died alone, his colossal fortune utterly useless. Nick decides to go back west. The East, New York, and Long Island had become a place of moral sickness for him. But before he leaves, he has 2 final encounters. He runs into Jordan Baker. Their brief, cynical romance ends easily with the mutual acknowledgement of their dishonesty. She knows she's engaged to someone else, and Nick barely reacts. It's the final severing of his ties to the rotten crowd. Then he runs into Tom on 5th Avenue. Tom is self-pitying and utterly unrepentant. He admits he told George Wilson that Gatsby killed Myrtle, justifying it by saying that Gatsby ran over Myrtle like you'd ran over a dog. Nick refuses to shake his hand, accusing Tom of being a cheat and a coward. Tom's only defense is that Gatsby deserved it. It confirms Nick's initial judgment that Tom is permanently encased in his own privilege and cruelty. Nick returns to Gatsby's abandoned house one last time, clearing out his small cottage. He sits on Gatsby's lawn, gazing out across the bay at the dark water. And this is where the novel transcends social commentary and becomes, I'd say pure philosophy. Nick thinks about the first Dutch sailors who came to the New World, seeing the fresh green land for the first time. That moment, he says, was something to commensurate to his capacity for wonder. This wonder is what Gatsby was chasing. Gatsby didn't realize that when he was looking at the green light, he wasn't looking towards the future, he was looking backward, chasing an idealized moment that was already gone. Fitzgerald's final words summarize Gatsby's tragedy, the tragedy of the American dream and the universal human condition. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, so we beat on, both against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. We are all like Gatsby, constantly struggling to move forward while being pulled by the anchor of memory and the idealized versions of what could have been.